Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 404 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Eilon, CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and an author. Our third book is called From Letters to Leaders, Leveraging Your Fraternity or Sorority Experience to Land Your Dream Job. So go and pick up that book today on Amazon. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there is nothing like great food to bring college students together. Fun fact, I've been a serial entrepreneur for the last 20 years. And once you get a taste for how great that adventure can be, it's really hard to go back and work in the corporate arena. I think I've developed a dread for bureaucracy and slow decision making. So it's been an incredible ride running Greek University for the last 8 years. It's also a way to ensure that management shares your values because you are management, and that values congruence has become increasingly more important to me as I've gotten older. So let's talk to our next guest more about entrepreneurship. Colin C. Campbell has been a serial entrepreneur for over 30 years and is the author of Start, Scale, Exit, Repeat, Serial Entrepreneur's Secrets Revealed. This debuted #1 bestseller on Amazon. He has founded and scaled various internet companies that collectively have reached a valuation of almost $1 billion. Having successfully navigated the exits of companies like Two Cows, Interactive, Internet Direct Canada, Hostopia, Geeks for Less, and .club domains, Campbell has not only centered his name as a startup expert, but has also collected an array of accolades, including spots on Inc. 500 and Inc. 5000 rosters for several years in a row. He currently runs an incubator with several successful companies, including Paw.com, Escape Club, Hip Optical, Pencilla, and others. A sought-after speaker in the world of entrepreneurship, Campbell has spoken at several high-profile universities and also events. He leads Startup Club with almost 1 million members, continuing to share his experiences as he interviews experts, authors, and serial entrepreneurs. Welcome to the show, Colin.
Wow, wonderful. Thank
That's
you.
a pretty good intro, I would say. You've done a lot.
I have it. It's been an interesting experience right from college. I have to say there's a lot going back to the early days in school that sowed the seeds of that success.
That's great. I mean, not every college student necessarily gets that experience. I mean, I know for me, it really wasn't until I got out in the real world and I was the CFO to a CEO of an internet startup that I really understand all of the processes and systems that really go into building an entrepreneurial venture. They didn't teach that in a textbook, at least not in my college. But I mean, let's talk about that because I agree with you. I think, the college is the foundation. You decided to attend the University of Toronto Scarborough. What made you choose this particular institution for your undergraduate experience?
Well, quite frankly, it was close to the family farm. And I'd go on the weekends home to the family farm, and then I'd stay during the week on residence at the college. But it happened to turn out to be a great experience for me. Scarborough campus is a smaller college amongst, I think, 10 or 11 colleges throughout the university. And even though there were 60,000 people in the university at the time, there were about 4,000 to 5,000 people in this one college. And I really liked that community aspect within a smaller environment. It gave me the opportunity to start a business. Business was called University Student Tutors. It was short-lived because we did not have Zoom back then. And we had to pick up all the tutors and drive them to the high schoolers. And it just, at a certain point, we realized it just wasn't economically feasible. That being said, I also had the opportunity to run for Speaker of the Council and Vice President of Finance. And I took a lot of marketing and business courses and really look back at that time as a period of learning for me, preparing for a life of entrepreneurship.
That's awesome. I love that you have that background. And I know today, certainly, my kids, they're starting college now. They have a lot more options as it relates to entrepreneurship, which I'm really grateful for. And Gen Z, clearly, there's a lot of entrepreneurs in Gen Z. And I think it really started with us as the parents, the Gen Xers, basically telling our kids that you can just follow your own path. It doesn't have to be some predetermined path to success. And, basically these Gen Z students, they saw boomers, guys like Bill Gates and many, many others, build huge companies out of their garage. So that taught them that there's really no one path to success. And you've also been a serial entrepreneur. You've authored this book, Start, Scale, Exit, Repeat. Tell our audience what inspired you to write this book.
Well, to be quite frank, I'm not a writer. I never considered myself to be a writer. I'm not a consultant. My day job is running the companies. I was asked by my CEO coach in 2012 to fly to MIT to talk to a group of 60 successful entrepreneurs. It was the Entrepreneurs Master's Program put on by Vern Harnish. And it was quite intimidating, actually, to walk in there because you had to have a minimum of $1 million in sales. And so my coach asked me to speak. It was about 4 hours long and really talk about what were the patterns that existed in my prior successes. What did I do over and over again to start, scale, exit, repeat? And it's interesting because there's a number of patterns that we explored. One was that often I would catch the next wave. And by the way, this is one of the greatest times to be an entrepreneur. AI is the next big wave. We caught the wave in 1993. It was called the internet. And then in 2000, broadbands. And then there was a regulatory shift which occurred in 2012 when ICANN, the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, deregulated the internet space, and we were able to obtain a domain extension called .club, which competed with .com, .net, .org, and that's actually a full namespace. And so what I've seen in those patterns is a shift or a change. And that's an opportunity because big corporations by nature are very conservative and risk averse. Enter the entrepreneur. This is the opportunity for entrepreneurs to really find something, get behind it, and grow.
I love that you're pointing out the value of AI, and it's something that we're working with on our team right now to develop some really, really exciting products. So I appreciate that you're pointing that out. I think it's absolutely phenomenal, and it is a great opportunity for all these entrepreneurs. And I think the Gen Z students that I'm working with on college campuses, they have all kinds of ideas in their head for new products, new services that they want to launch. Maybe, it does involve AI. What is the formula to launch a successful startup?
Well, is it dumb luck? Is it hard work? Or is there actually something formulaic? And that's sort of the question that this book tries to answer. And we spent 10 years writing this book. So since that day at MIT, I started writing the book. It took over 10 years. The last 2 years, a group of 6 people who work at Startup Club contributed to over 200 interviews to put this book together to figure out what it is that makes a startup successful. So I'll give you a few pieces of this. There are many, but let me just give you a few pieces. First of all, you're going to want to solve a problem. And problems are everywhere. Ideas are everywhere. They're in your life. They may be in your first job. This is interesting because my son wants to start a business. And I said, well, you know what you should do? Get a job. Because you're going to see opportunities in the industry you love. The key is to get a job in the industry you love. That's very, very important. If you love solar, get a job in solar. If you love, in my case, my son, he loves art. He's an architect and he loves real estate. So I said, get a job at a development firm. Mm-hmm. So that's what he's doing. So then this is like 2 days ago. So literally a few hours later, he applied for 6 jobs at different places. So first of all, we're going to find a problem, but we're going to want to have a purpose or passion for this business. Let me tell you right now, business is a roller coaster. It's an up and down. You're going to go up, you're going to go down. It's painful, it's stressful. It's gonna beat you up pretty hard. And when you're down, unless you've got a passion for it, unless you love it, you're not going to stick with it. Don't go into a business say, I just want to make money. Try to find some other reason for it, some other purpose. Then the other 3 things I mentioned already is catching a wave. I think that's an opportunity. And I think this is important because a lot of entrepreneurs I see when they first graduate from college, they launch a t-shirt company or a bar app. And I don't know how many entrepreneurs I've seen do that. AI is really transformative. It is something in the 2020s that will define this generation of entrepreneurs. It will mint millionaires. It will mint millions of millionaires. And even if your business is not an AI business, every startup needs to embrace AI to accelerate their growth. The last thing I will say is, there's actually three more, sorry. If you can pick an idea that's scalable, okay, this is key. A lot of the ideas that I've had in my past have been scalable. Paw.com is an e-commerce business with almost 1 million customers. It's scalable. And because it's scalable, you can grow it much larger and make much larger profits and sell it for a higher price down the road. Now, let me tell you this. My wife owns a Montessori school. The capacity is 110 people. In order for us to go to 111, and we looked at this once, it would cost us millions of dollars in infrastructure, and it would be very hard to scale. So when you first choose your idea, think about the scalability, how scalable it is. Now, to be clear here, scalable businesses, the ones that can go global, can also be more competitive. So you'll want to look at the counter argument to that scalability as well. But quite frankly, my wife has more issues running her school with her 16 employees than I have had running any of my companies. And I have one company that's 800 employees. We have another company with 600 employees. The fact of the matter is you have a lot more talent and resources and leadership to help you run the larger companies. The last thing I'll say is a moat, okay? You need to create a moat around your startup. That means getting trademarks, building a brand, expanding distribution, all of those things. And what we do in a cohort is when I teach a cohort at NSU, and we do it every 2 months. It's actually free, by the way. So it's the Allen Levant Center, and if you're in South Florida, it's a great place to look. And you should look also within your colleges for these cohorts or these incubators. They're normally free, and they're phenomenal. You get all these experts and contacts and opportunities with investors. It's incredible what people will do to help you out. But we put together, I thought it was a 4 sticky note business plan. And the 4 sticky notes, we're talking about the story, the money, the people, and the systems. And under story, you're going to want to do that. You want to identify your problem. What's your purpose? What's the business? What space do we want to own? And we go to it in a lot more detail. If you get the book, Start, Scale, Exit, Repeat, you'll get a lot more detail about how to create a business plan. You know, we do it in these cohorts in a half hour. Yeah. And by doing a business plan, by getting involved in a cohort, or even by getting a mentor. You know, we interviewed the lady who runs SCORE. SCORE has over 10,000 volunteers run by the SBA. They make a claim that you can increase your chances of success by 3 times. Wow. So there are a lot of things you can do before you go into the startup. We are no longer in the day of starting your business out of a garage, by the way. Today, we start our business in incubators. It takes a village to raise a startup.
Good points. I love all of it. You're absolutely right. I think mentorship is key. Getting a job in your industry that you are passionate about is key. So that way you can see the problems there and attack it as an entrepreneur. So I love all of these strategies. I think it's right on. And you've hired a ton of people to work for your various businesses. How do you hire the right people to enable your company to grow?
Yes, and even in startup, how do you hire or even partner with the right people? I often see a couple of buddies get together and they decide to start a business. The reality is you might want to think twice about that. Yes, we've seen examples where it's worked with Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, and that's because they complemented each other. So the first thing I would say to a prospective entrepreneur is understand profiling. This is probably one of the most powerful techniques you can use. What do I mean by profiling? What I mean is understand first who you are, and then try to understand who you need to complement on your team, whether you need to partner with or hire for those people. For instance, I'm not a salesperson. I don't like rejection. So I've always partnered or hired with others to do that. I'm also not a geek. I only aspire to be one, I'll be quite frank, but I'm not a geek. So I've always had to hire the technology staff or partner with the technology staff to fill in those gaps. We want to understand our personality and those around us. I'm actually bigger on that than even skills. And skills sometimes can be learned. But if you got the wrong personality type, if you have someone you hire or you partner with for sales, but they don't have that influential personality, they're not the social, affable, likable person, then you're not going to succeed. And if you're not good at sales, by the way, 75% of entrepreneurs are dominant and influential. So that they're really good at sales and they got that dominant sort of instinct. A smaller portion are dominant and analytical or dominant and steady. Okay. The fact is that dominant and analytical, which is myself, we might be in the minority, but we understand and analyze that we need to support ourselves with business partners and hire the right personality profiles, hire the right skill sets, etc. So that's probably the message I would give is really understand profiling. I use a program called DISC, D-I-S-C, and I've learned that really well. It's actually to a point, and this has taken probably about 20 years, I can look at somebody in a bar, across the bar, and actually identify her profile. So it's very interesting.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, there's a lot of profile tests out there. DISC is certainly one of them. You can do that analysis even online for free. There are websites that can do some of that stuff. I love it. I think it makes total sense. Now, you also talk about dressing for success. How does that help you?
Well, it's funny because I don't actually mean dress for success. I mean, there are rare circumstances, like when we were running a platform company that sold to telecoms, we had to wear suits and ties because your clients are in suits and ties. And I've always said try to dress to the level of your clients, your customers. But I mean really online, and especially with your audience, I would really spend the time to build your LinkedIn, to really position yourself as an expert in a particular field or area on your LinkedIn. You're always being watched, whether it's an investor, whether you're getting hired for a job, everyone's going to check out your LinkedIn. You're building a reputation. This is the start of your career, and this is the opportunity to really set the right tone. Now, if you can take it a little further and get a Wikipedia, then you started to, but the notability on the Wikipedia is very high. Okay, so I understand a lot of your listeners starting out. I just didn't get a Wikipedia until about 4 or 5 years ago about myself. And sometimes I still question if I should be there or not. No, I'm joking. But the reality is your online presence is your reputation. And remember those photos that you took that got posted on Facebook during that party. Look, they're going to be there forever. And just be sensitive of that one day you will be raising $1 million for your startup and people will search your name. And they'll come across you. So I would definitely say work on your LinkedIn. And there are we can have a whole other show about LinkedIn. I'm not a LinkedIn expert, but one thing I did is ask for testimonials. Don't be afraid to do that with your friends. Like you really want, when you leave a job, for instance, ask for them to leave you a testimonial on LinkedIn, those kind of things. You want to work at. Of course, you can do Twitter as well, and Instagram, and Facebook, and the other social media channels.
Yeah, all great advice. I agree with you. A lot of the college students listening right now, some of them don't have LinkedIn accounts, and I think that's a terrible mistake. I think everybody's an expert in something. Create that LinkedIn profile, make it about some niche topic that you're passionate about with a professional photo, and just like you said, get those testimonials. I have 80 testimonials on my LinkedIn page. Some people might say that's excessive. I don't think it's enough. I think I want to keep growing it because it really, when you have 80 individual people that are real humans on LinkedIn that are vouching for me, that says that I'm the real deal, and it gives people that I meet a lot more confidence in doing business with. So
exactly.
Yeah, I like that a lot. This is great advice. What is one mistake that you see newcomers make as, let's say entrepreneurs, for example, and what advice do you have to avoid it?
The number one reason why startups fail, you know what it is?
What is it?
It's that they don't have enough money to get to a certain stage gate or points.
Yeah.
82% of startups fail because they have issues with money. Look, when you are setting your 4 sticky note business plan, and I like sticky notes, by the way, because they're small and you can stick them on the board so we can keep an eye on our plan. Very simple. This isn't your investor plan. This is your actual plan. when you set up this 4 sticky note business plan, under the money sticky note, we're going to want to put how much money do we need to launch and how much money do we need to get to our first stage gate. This is very important. Your first stage gate could be an MVP, minimum viable product. It could be your first 10 customers, your first 10 distributors, whatever that stage gate is. We're going to want to put that on the sticky note, and we're going to want to identify the people we need to get to that stage gate and the money that we need to get to that stage gate. You don't need all the money up front to get to break even.
Yeah.
You do need enough money to get to a certain stage gate where you can now pitch this product to investors. The number one thing that investors are looking for are proven concepts. So if you can prove to them that you can hit that stage gate, you can increase your chances of success.
Great points. I love all of it. As a speaker, a lot of people don't even know this. I actually am an accounting major for my undergraduate degree. And, although I hate accounting, I literally left the field because it is so boring doing debits and credits all day. It is a great background as an entrepreneur because I understand income statement. I understand, everything with financials, balance sheet, you name it. And I do my own taxes for the business as well. So that foundation is really important when it comes to money and making sure that we have enough of it in order to grow this entrepreneurial venture. And, when I first set out 8 years ago to build Greek University, I knew that I needed really a 6-month ramp up time in order to reach 10 customers, 10 clients. And once I got those 10 clients, I knew from there we would be able to take off. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. In the beginning, it was really slow, building a business from nothing and growing it. But once we got those first 10 customers, we were good. And I knew that I just needed enough money to essentially have the payroll to cover us for the first 6 months. And if I could do that, get the first 10 clients, we were good. So I agree with you there. I think that's really, really good advice. Tell us about a startup idea that you had, but you actually did not pursue it. What made you decide against it? And what can our listeners learn from that?
It's interesting because in the book, we don't only talk about the successes, we talk about the failures.
Mm-hmm.
We can learn a lot from failures, and I have failed a lot. I share a number of those in the books, and I also did a number of interviews of other startups that have failed and the reasons why they failed. What comes to mind right now, there was a company called Shareholder Blockchain. I think I still have the website up. I love this concept. I still love this concept. I'm obsessed with it. This is 5 years later. We launched the company. We set a stage gate. I put $50,000 in. I was working with a lawyer and some programmers, and I set a stage gate. I said, I want a minimum viable product in 90 days. This is my stage gate. This is what I want. Here's the 50,000 to get it. 90 days rolls around, and I admit I should have been paying attention. There's some mistakes there. 90 days rolls around, and they changed the business plan. Completely different than the one that we originally had, which was the idea was it was for private companies, a platform to manage stock or to manage private stock with options and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
In any case, I instantly shut the company down. See, when you don't hit your stage gate, you can either pivot or shut it down. In that case, I decided to shut it down. There are other failures. Again, we go into detail in the book. I think the biggest failure I've ever had in my life was when I was 28 years old. I should probably mention this. We had a publicly traded company in Canada. We were the fastest growing company in Canada, number one. And we decided to merge with a company called Look Communications, and it was a cable company. The stocks shot up to over $1 billion, and I was 28 now and 13% of this company.
Right.
Okay, publicly traded. But when I had done the merger, I had agreed to a lockup for all the shareholders for 18 months. It was a pretty strict lockup. Canada had some issues back then with free exit, so they had some pretty strict lockups. So I agreed to this lockup, not knowing what could happen. I mean, look, this internet was going to take over the world.
Right.
Right. And then all of a sudden, bam, you know what happened, right? 2000, March of 2000 was the dot-com crash.
Right.
These things do happen. Bad things can happen. Well, that stock that traded at $19 a share, I ended up selling for 6 cents a share.
Oh.
And I can't tell you how painful it is.
So painful
to lose $100 million at 28 years old. But it definitely left an imprint in my brain.
Yeah.
So now one of the things when it comes to exiting a company, I always say liquidity or control. And by the way, I don't think this book would have came about if I hadn't had that failure back then. Fast forward 6 years later, we took another company public and sold it to a Fortune 500 company for all cash. So you know what? This time we learned our lesson.
Yeah, everything happens for a reason, and I agree with you. I also have had multiple things that, if I had a do-over, I definitely would take it. And I think that's what the students need to know is that success is not a straight line. It's a series of wrong turns, U-turns, mistakes that you learn from, and that's why I'm successful. It's because I learned from prior mistakes, and there's really no way to shortcut that. And it's not a straight line as much as you want to believe in your head as a college student that you're going to go directly to success. It's just not like that. And so you'll learn a lot. I don't think you lost. I think you learned, and you're better for it today. So that's really
exactly. Cool. Our startup failures are the scars of our past that guide us through our new ventures.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure.
You talked a little bit about scaling, and I think that's a really interesting concept because I think a lot of the Gen Z students, they're not thinking about scalability, and I think that's critical. That's why you've done so well. Could you share one scaling strategy that you swear by?
Okay, there is nothing you can do more to scale a company than find your X factor. Now, what is an X factor? An X factor is something that you do different and you have an advantage in a marketplace that no one else has. Think Domino's Pizza, 30 minutes are free.
Right.
Think National Car Rental. You just show up and get into your car. I used to travel. I don't know if you use National, by the way.
Oh, yeah, I use it religiously. I'm an Emerald Club member.
Exactly. And I do as well. And by the way, they're number one.
Yeah.
They became number one. I mean, Hertz used to be number one. They became number one. You no longer have to spend a half hour waiting at a counter. You just show up, get in the car, and go. It wasn't easy for them. They had to re-engineer their processes, change everything. So I often, when I'm teaching the cohorts, I talk to the students, and this is a topic of conversation that came up between should we talk about this in start or just scale? And I actually think that you should begin to think about it in start when you're starting your business. And I'm not saying you're going to get it. It took us 7 years to get it at Hostopia. And when we got it, the dominoes fell. We became the best in the world at migrations. And because of that, the people who bought our products were mid-level executives who didn't want to get fired. We won one contract after another until we had AT&T, British Telecom, Vodafone. We won all of them. It was a domino effect because we put in what was nearly an unbearable brand promise. 100% migration guarantee. 30 minutes for free pizza. Just show up and go. National Car Rental. Find your X factor. If you can find it. And this is why I like it when people work at companies. I like it because when they work at companies, they can identify what's the bottleneck in this industry and say, hey, you know what? I can solve that bottleneck. And that's when you can really take off, and that's when you can really scale. Don't panic if you don't have it on day one or even year 3. But if you can find it, it can scale your company like nothing else.
Yeah, those are great examples. I love Domino's Pizza for the 30 minutes, although their drivers got into a bunch of accidents because of it. So that's a whole nother story. But yeah, and
well, think about Uber. You think about Uber, and you think about Airbnb. I mean, these are companies that they had to. There was a lot of regulations they were facing, a lot of challenges. It's not easy to find it. Okay, it's not easy.
Yeah.
But when you get it, it's game over.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you could say Netflix could be another example that, completely revolutionized an industry and put Blockbuster out of business, right? There's multiple examples, but those are really, really good conversations. I like it. I want to ask you one last question because I think it's really important. You've successfully exited multiple ventures. So what does the ideal exit strategy look like to you, and how do you prepare for that in advance?
So I think the first thing I would do is when you start your business, think about the exit. You might want to think about who could potentially buy this company down the road. In fact, at Club, we literally said we wanted GoDaddy to buy this company. Right. And GoDaddy eventually bought the company. But I also say now that we have 10 companies in our incubator, and one thing I do is we make certain we have a virtual drive set up, and every contract goes in that virtual drive. Do not underestimate the importance of due diligence and how challenging it can be. If you don't have the right documents, you can kill your deal. So make it simple from the very beginning. Now, when you're looking at selling your company, there are three types of buyers. There's the cash flow buyer, there's the competitor, and there's the strategic buyer. And the cash flow buyer, obviously, they're the buyer that just wants your company based on earnings multiple and usually leverages it. A lot of private equity firms will do this.
Right.
And because of that, you're not going to get a premium valuation. You're going to get maybe what's called a fair market valuation. A competitor comes in and says, well, actually, I can eliminate half your expenses. So I can arbitrage and bring you into my company. And sometimes you can convince them to give you somewhere in between. They're not going to give you the full benefit of elimination of expenses, but they will give you somewhere in between. But then the third type of buyer are the strategic buyers. By selling to GoDaddy.club, they have a much broader distribution than us. So it was strategic for them. They didn't look at us necessarily in earnings multiple. They looked at us and said, okay, if we take this product and we sell it to our we'll put it through our distribution channel and we sell it, we're going to grow this thing a lot larger and it will be a lot more profitable. It's worth a lot more money in GoDaddy's hands than it is in our hands. And so we were able to extract a huge premium in the marketplace. And so if you can find a strategic buyer, do it. And as you go through your period of starting, scaling, write down who you think. Create a list of all the companies you think that might buy you one day. And then whether you use an investment banker or not, you can hand over that list. But I'll tell you, more often than not, we had met the leaders at GoDaddy at conventions for 3, 4, 5 years in a row before we finally sold to them. We got to know them really well. And in fact, we didn't even use a broker with that club. Normally, we do use a broker. Like at my prior companies, we used a broker, but we did not use one at that club. You can actually get to know the people, the decision makers on the other side who are going to eventually buy your company.
Very cool. Very, very cool. This interview has been brilliant for any entrepreneur. I think it's required listening. We love good food here at the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I know you love really good food too. So where do you like to go for a bite to eat in Fort Lauderdale?
So our favorite place is Takato, Takato. It's on the beach. Who wouldn't like that, right?
Sure.
We're sitting out on the building, overlooking the beach. And it's fascinating because it's experiential as well. So when I take clients there, we'll order the hot rocks and you put the little steaks on it and you cook that on the hot rocks, and it's just a very nice food. It's high quality, and the scenery is amazing.
That sounds great. I'm definitely going to have to go and check it out. I like the experience too. I want it to be like all senses experience dining. So I love it. I think that's great. All right. So if our student listeners, if they want to pick up your book, it's called Start, Scale, Exit, Repeat. Maybe they want to get you to come and speak on their college campus about entrepreneurship. Where should they go to connect with you?
Yeah, I think the best place to go to connect with us is to go to startup.club. www.startup.club and sign up to the email list. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn, Colin C. Campbell. If you're interested in the book, it debuted #1 bestseller on Amazon in 3 categories last week. It just came out last week. The Audible's coming out any day now, but you can go to Audible, you can go to Barnes & Noble, you can go to Amazon, and you can download the book and start your journey on the path to starting, scaling, exiting, and repeating that over and over again.
That is fantastic. Sign up for the newsletter at startup.club. Go and buy his book today. I'm telling you, Colin knows what he's talking about when it comes to entrepreneurship and selling businesses. Start, scale, exit, repeat. I absolutely love it, Colin. It has been an honor to meet you in person. Thank you so much for sharing all of this with our audience.
Absolutely. It was a true pleasure.
All right.
I get a true kick out of it.
And to our listeners, if you enjoyed this conversation with Colin, make sure you like it on social media. Make sure you share it all over social media so that way more students get access to Colin's book. And we look forward to seeing you on another episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.